And now we're live for today's webinar on photorealistic rendering in Fusion 360.
Hello everyone. Good evening, Philippines. Now, with that material, you will now be able to work on with the files with me. You will be able to do the renderings with me, and we'll be able to learn rendering in Fusion 360 from start to end. You have to show your design to someone, then you just use this picture, you can just use this image to show what you have designed, and that person does not really have to open the design and actually see what you have done. But now, when we are talking about photorealistic rendering has some quirks that come along with it. So, photorealistic rendering, as the name suggests, it should be realistic. It should look like it is a photo that has been clicked of the real object in real space. It shouldn't look like it has been, rendered from a software. It shouldn't look like it is just a object that has been there in the rendering workspace of Fusion 360 or any other software for that matter. It should look like it is a real object in the real space. And there are certain principles that we are going to study about photorealistic rendering to actually make your objects look more real and more inanimate or more into the actual physical space. So to start with, I'll request all of you to open this file that says black oxide coated stainless steel bolt. So I want you all to open this file. And as you can see, once you open this file, as you can see, this is the design that we had imported from the materials that I've shared on the drive. Now I want the design is done. All of the details are correct. Now I want to share this with the person concerned. Now, as I said, I don't really know if the person has the software and if that person can really check out 3D designs, but that person surely needs to see the design. That person really has to know the design, that how it is and how it is going to look in the real environment. So to give the experience of it being in real environment, we have to create a render of this particular image. Now, to create a render or to start creating renderings, what you have to do is go to the drop down over here that says design. So as you can see, we are currently in the design workspace where we have all of the tools that can help us design the product. But since we are done with the designing and I want to render it, so I can just click on the drop down and I can head to the render workspace over here, as you can see. So I can just click on the render workspace and instantly I'm going to be shifted to a different kind of workspace which looks different than the design workspace. This is the render workspace where all of the tools that are given to us are related to rendering, which can help us render the product better. So the moment you open rendering workspace, it may look something like this, or depending on what the defaults have been set in your software, it may look a little bit different as well. But yes, as you can see, this is the bolt that we have as a design, and this is how it looks in the render workspace. Now, just a quick overview of the render workspace. So as you can see in the render workspace, we have setup column, we have in canvas render, and then we have render. That's it. We have just three main toolbars where we have certain different tools that can help us render the product better. Now, starting with the setup toolbar over here, as you can see, if you click on the drop down, you have about 5 options over here that you can use for creating the renders. So first is you can change the physical material of the object. So as you know, it is a bolt, and bolts are mostly made out of either steel or stainless steel. So the material over here is correct. It is the physical material is steel, which is correct. This is the material that we wanted. But of course, we can change the appearance. So to change the appearance, even if the material is steel, I want it to look like it is covered with black oxide, or I want it to look like it is powder coated in black color. So that is the appearance, that is the external appearance that is visible to everyone. Material cannot be visible to everyone, but the external appearance is definitely visible to everyone. So I want to change that external appearance. So for doing that, I can go to the setup drop down, or simply over here in the toolbar itself, I have this option for changing the appearance. So I can click on the button for appearance, and as you can see, once I open the appearance toolbar, we have certain options over here. So it is asking us to apply the appearance that we are selecting either to the body or component, or just to the face that is selected. So of course, whatever I apply as the appearance to this body, I want it to be applied to the complete body and not just a single face or a single edge. So yes, bodies and components is the correct selection over here. And as you can see in this design, it is showing that the current appearance that has been applied is of steel satin, which is correct because it has been imported from the physical material. So every physical material has an appearance attribute attached to it, and which is getting showed over here. But I don't want this attribute over here, rather I want something else. So you can head to the library over here, and as you can see in this library, we have a lot of options for a different type of materials and different types of appearances. So as you know, we want to apply black oxide or black powder coat to this object or to this body. So I can either go and search for that, or I can just simply type in the search window over here. I can just simply type black oxide, and I'll be able to see that there is an appearance in the Fusion 360 appearance library that is under coating, that is black oxide coating. So yes, this is the material, this is the appearance that I want on this bolt. So I can just simply click on it, and using my mouse I can drag it and place it on the bolt. So as you can see, once I drag it and place it, the appearance is now updated from steel satin to powder coating or black oxide coating. So this is how it looks now, completely different than it was before, but yes, definitely this is what I wanted, so I am happy with this. Moving on to the next thing is, of course, the scene setup. So scene setup is very important. It is used for basically setting up the environment, you can say, where you can adjust the light, you can adjust the angle of the light, direction of the light, and camera perspective and everything. So to do that, you can click on this button that says scene settings, or you can just simply go to the setup drop down, and from here you can select scene settings. So once you click on scene settings, again, as I said, you can get all of the data that is related to the scene, and you can modify and change all of the data that is required here. So currently we have the environment brightness that is of 1000 lumens, and background is environment. In your case, it might be solid color as well. It may be different from version to version. As I've been using Fusion 360 for a long time, I have certain preferences set by default, so that's why it kind of automatically switches to environment. But if you don't want environment and if you want solid color, then you can just simply go to the drop down and you can select a solid color. Or either ways, if you want environment, you can click on the drop down and you can go to environment. Now we are going to look about environment a little bit later. First, let's study about the settings. So we also have ground plane settings, where you can have a ground plane or you cannot have a ground plane. Because if you want to show the object floating in mid-air or something like that, you can not have a ground plane, and you can just simply show it as if it is floating in air and there is no reflection or shadow whatsoever of that object. But of course, in this case, I want a ground plane, so I'm going to click on the ground plane. I am going to click on flatten ground, and I do want some reflections. So if in your case it is unticked, so just click on this so that the reflections get switched on for this particular scene. And you can vary the roughness of the reflection from zero point 0.0 to 1.0. So 1.0 is a very rough reflection, as you can see over here, and zero point 0.0 or zero point 0.1 is a very sharp and a very mirror like reflection on the surface. So depending on what you want and how you want it, you can change the scale from here. I personally feel comfortable around 0.15 or zero point 0.2, 0.1 or zero point 0.2. That is the roughness that I personally feel comfortable with. And moving on to the camera. Now, whatever you are seeing, like if you are seeing a zoomed out view or a zoomed in view, if you are seeing it from the left side view or you are seeing it from the top view, anything that you are seeing, any view that you are seeing is basically what you are being shown from a camera. So that is called a camera. Wherever you go, whatever you do over here, you zoom out, you're basically taking the camera far away from the object. If you're zooming in, you're basically taking the camera closer to the object. If you're seeing it from the front view, you're basically changing the view of the camera. You are just shifting the camera. Object is never going in front or in back, or it is not, it is not shifting its views, or it is not getting zoomed in or zoomed out. Object remains in place. it is V, or it is the camera that is going in the back, or it is coming in front closer to the object, depending on what we set. So if we go to the home view, this is the current camera view that we are seeing. So that is camera according to rendering. And here the camera is perspective. If you want, you can keep it orthographic. If you want, you can keep it perspective with orthophasis. So depending on your requirements, you can change it. But for real, if you are talking about photorealistic rendering, or if you are talking about real environments, then the camera should always be set to perspective, because perspective view is what we view at, or how we view at all the objects, how we look at all the objects in the physical space. Then we have the focal length, depending on how far you want the object, or how close you want the object. If you want to have a little bit of a, you can say, a fish eye vision or anything like that, you can change the focal length. But I don't really experiment with that. 90 millimeter focal length is just suitable for me. Exposure, again, you can increase or decrease the brightness value. So currently it is 8.8. If I just drag the slider away, as you can see, it increases the exposure. And exposure increases in a way that, it is making the image brighter and more whiter. And the more you drag it towards the left, it makes the image more darker and more towards the black side. So that's why I don't really again feel like, working on with the exposure values, because the default settings are just perfect. So we can just keep it back at 8.8 exposure value. Then if you want, if there are many objects in your rendering workspace, or if you are rendering just a small part of a big assembly, and you want that part to be in focus and everything else to be a little bit blurred out, then you can go with depth of field, where you can um, add a focus point which is going to stay sharp, and rest everything in the background, or rest everything that is not being selected is going to get blurred. So that is going to give you a little depth of field effect. But again, in this particular case, we don't require it, so we can check it off. And again, aspect ratio, I want to keep it at viewport aspect ratio, but some people might need a square aspect ratio, or presentation view, or even landscape portrait. So anything that you feel comfortable with, depending on your requirement with the rendering, you can do that. But I personally keep it at viewport aspect ratio all the time. So this is about the scene settings, the camera settings, the ground plane settings, and the environment settings. Now, which environment is currently applied over here, we don't know. And also the lighting, as you can see in the background, whatever the lighting is, whatever the shadow is, everything that you see in the background, it is controlled by the environment library. So you really need to know which environment needs to be applied over here. And to do that, you can just simply head to environment library. And as you can see, current environment in my case is photo booth, because I have set it as default. But if you want, you can go with cool light. So you can just again drag it and drop it in the scene over here, and it will get applied. So as you can see, compared to photo booth, cool light has a different kind of a color. It has a different kind of light. The direction is also different. As you can see, the shadow is going longer and it is going towards the right hand side. If you talk about rim highlights, you can just drag it and drop it, and you can see how rim highlights look. So rim highlights is again different. It has a different color. It has different features altogether. Now, depending on what you want, you can adjust that. Now, you can just, you have all of these options. If you want, you can also download some custom environments. You can attach custom environments, and there are certain real life environments as well. Like we have crossroads, dry lake, field, plaza, skylight, and snowfield. So depending on where you want to show your product, you can use all of these. But I currently, don't feel that we should use this object in any of these environments, because it is just going to, not let us focus on the main object. So irrespective of all of these other environments, we are just going to stick with, let's say, photo booth. So photo booth gives one of the best colors. As you can see, it is like, very soft, and also the shadow is proper. I personally feel that photo booth is the correct environment for this particular rendering. Of course, if you don't like photo booth, or if you have any other environment that you feel would look better, then you can use that environment. Now again, heading back to the settings, if you see, we have this position toolbar over here. So what really this position toolbar does is that if you click on this button, you can rotate the lights. So as I said, the environment that we attached has its own lights, it has the color of the light, the position or the placement of the light. But of course you can always rotate the position of the light, or you can always change the placement of the light. You cannot change the color of the light, but you can definitely change the placement of the light. So as you can see, with the rotation handle, I am able to rotate the plane, or I'm able to rotate the light or from the light source, so that I can have the best view of my product. So I feel that about 42.9 or 43 degrees is the correct placement, because I'm getting a little bit reflection over here, and I can see the threads properly, and also the shadow is seen clearly. Now ground scale, it is just the scale of the ground. You can zoom in on the ground, you can zoom out on the ground depending on what you want. I can just keep it at 1, which is the default value. So I don't really want to, change it or do any experiment with that. So now that I've changed the position of the light, now that I have applied the environment and everything, I can just simply click on the position button once again to get rid of the position toolbar. And once I'm done, I can click on close. Now this is about setting up the scene for rendering and setting up the environment that you want to render in. But just doing this won't help you make the renders. Now you also need to know how to render and what are the principles of rendering, as I spoke about in the starting. So if you go to the setup drop down over here, we also have some other options where you can, control the texture map. You can add some decals over here on the object. So we don't really want decals on the object right now, so we are not going to use it. But if you see, decal basically adds an image or places an image on the selected face. As you can see in the thumbnail over here, that they were able to place the Autodesk logo on the object that they are trying to render. So that is decal, but of course we don't need it right now over here. So we are going to skip that part. Then we have something called as in canvas render. So in canvas render, you can basically think of it as local rendering. So as you know, Fusion 360 is a cloud-based software, and as you have a license of the software, you are given certain credit points, or you are given certain credits that you can use to make the renderings, animations, or simulations using Fusion 360. So all of the computing that goes on actually happens in the server, in the cloud, and it doesn't, require much of your system's graphic processing capabilities. So even if you are running the software on a low end PC or a low end system, you can still get good results because you are using the cloud software, because you are using the cloud servers of Fusion 360 to make the tasks possible. But sometimes it may so happen that you are not really sure that if the rendering is going to look good, or if you want to, make some changes before actually making or starting the final render. So for that, you can always do the in-canvas render, which basically does the rendering locally on the system. So it is able to, just give you a brief overview of how exactly the product is going to look in the given settings. So if you want, you can start with final rendering, or if you don't want, you can go back to the settings, modify certain settings that will make the rendering look the best. So yes, if you start in canvas render, just for the sake of it, as you can see, this is how in canvas render starts. And here in the bottom right, you can set the quality from excellent to final to infinite. So infinite quality is basically it is going to run infinite number of iterations of the product, so that you can have the best result of the rendering. But it takes a lot of time, so we can either keep it at excellent or final. So you can see the time elapsed and the number of iterations that have been done till now. And by the looks of it, it looks very good. Just I am not able to see any reflection. So probably I think I should decrease the roughness value of the reflection from 0.15 to zero point 0.1. So this idea I was able to get from in canvas render. Now once I'm done, I can just click on in canvas render stop over here. So once I click on this button, it will stop the in canvas render, and I'll be again headed back to the rendering workspace. Now as I said, I want to change the roughness of the reflection that I'm getting on the ground over here. So what I can do is I can just simply go to scene settings, and here it is zero point 0.1. I can make it 0.05, or I can add any custom value that I feel. Currently, I feel 0.05 is good enough, so I can click on close. And now that we are ready, we can start rendering. But again, are we going to render it like this? Because if you have seen a bolt in real environment, you may notice one thing, that bolt doesn't stand upright on its own like this. Either it will stand upright on its own in this position, upside down, something like this. It will stand upright on its own like this in this position, or it is going to be sleeping normally on the floor. Now when I say sleeping, it is going to be basically flat on the ground. It is not going to be vertical like this, but it is going to be horizontal on the ground. So this is one principle of photorealistic rendering that you should know, that how objects behave in actual environment, how objects actually act, or how objects work in the real environment. So in real environment, if you see a bolt, you won't be able to see it standing up on its own like in this way. It will either stand up on this face, or it is going to be, flat on the ground. So you have to really modify the design in a way that the screw is, or the bolt is, either laying on the ground, or it is standing up upright on this face, so that it makes it look real, and it makes the rendering looks more photorealistic, because it looks like it has been, sitting in a place properly, just like it would have been in a real environment or in a real space. So to do that, to make the changes, you can either just, select this body. You can go to the body drop down, you can select this body, and from the rendering workspace itself, you can press M on your keypad, and you can change the position of it, or you can just simply head back to the design workspace and do the same thing. But I feel that doing it over here would be a good thing, so I am changing the angle of it so that I can show it, laying flat on the floor. Now, if you go to the front view exactly, you'll be able to see that you need to give it some angle, because if you give it 90 degrees, it is not going to look good again, because it cannot stay up on its head like this while the other half of the body is floating in the air. So you have to experiment with the angles. You have to see, maybe 88 degrees would work, or 88.2 degrees would work. So I guess 88.2 degrees, or let's try with 88.3 degrees. Yeah, so 88.3 degrees really makes it look like it's, laying flat on the surface, because of the shadow and because of the reflection, as you can see. Or if you go in, if you zoom in deeper, as you can see, there is still some space that you can fill up. So maybe you can go for 88.4. And by the looks of it, 88.4 looks much better. And over here as well, it is touching the ground. So I guess 88.4 degrees is the uh, rotation that we use for this particular object. Now again, if you head back to the home view, it is going to look something like this, which I don't want. I want it to be rotated in this way, right? So I want it to be something like this, not 90 degrees, but by 70 degrees, so that I get a good view of this like this. So now this is the rendered object. This is how the object is going to look after it is rendered. And again, as you can see, the angle has been shifted over here because of some reason. So we'll have to rectify it once again. So let's go -2 degrees, or -1 degree. I guess -1 degree looks better now. So if we head back to the home view, this is how it is going to look. And once you're done, once you are happy with this, you can click on OK. So as you can see, rendering or placing the object is all about how you imagine it to be, how you actually, want to show the object, and how well you are trying to make it look photorealistic. That is the first thing. And of course, you have to be accurate with the numbers. You have to be very precise with the numbers to actually make it look real, and to make it look, flawless. So there is a lot of permutation combination. Not every time will 88.4 degree work with every kind of screw. With different kinds of screws, with different sizes of screws, the angle, the rotation, and everything may vary. So depending on the object that you are currently rendering, you have to, modify the settings in a way that it looks real. Now that it looks better, we are again going to just have a quick look at it by making an in-canvas render. And if you look at it now, as you can see, the shadows look so much better because they are falling exactly beneath the surface. Also, the lighting condition is suiting this particular environment, because as you can see, the photo booth lighting conditions are kind of trying to enhance the threads on the screw, or all of the metal body that is reflecting the light. It is just looking very natural and it looks very good. So I can stop it. I can stop the in canvas render. And now that I'm sure that the rendering is working, it looks good, I can head back to the final render where I can start rendering. Now once you go to render, as you can see, there are a lot of settings that you can use, you can change with respect to the object, with respect to the quality that you want. Now of course, as you have a license, you have certain limit, like you have limits where you can use your credits and how much credits you can use. So if I go to print, and if I go to the highest quality available for rendering, that is 8.4 megapixel, 8.5 into 11 inch, 300 pixels per inch, that is the quality of rendering. Render with cloud renderer and render quality final. In this case, it is going to require 8 cloud credits, and I have unlimited cloud credits and max per request. Like for each request that I do, I can use maximum 16 credits. So it falls well within the limit that I am assigned with. So I can start rendering. Now, of course, if you want to render it locally, you can render it locally, and it won't just, it won't take a lot of time depending on your system. It won't consume a lot of your cloud credits, and once you're done, you can just simply click on render. Now the downside with local rendering is that, so if you go to cloud rendering, whatever rendering you are doing can be seen over here. You can see the progress, you can see the timeline and everything. But with local rendering, you don't really get to see all of the updates, and you don't really have an idea of how much time it is taking. So depending on the system, depending on how you want it, how you want the rendering, the quality of the rendering, everything, you can change from local to cloud rendering. We'll also schedule a cloud rendering so that I can show you how cloud rendering looks like. So if I click on render now, you can see if I go to render gallery, I'm able to see the rendering of this, and I'm able to see two iterations over here. So one is the local render. As you can see, it is showing this symbol of cloud with with a slash across it, which basically tries to say that it is a local render, whereas the other render that has started right now, it is a cloud render, so it is going to take some time. If you just click on it, you will be able to see that render queue time is around less than 10 minutes. So it is going to take about 10 minutes to render this, whereas the local rendering that I had started is about to get finished. So yeah, depending on your system, you can switch between either local rendering or cloud rendering. Now that is about the basics of photorealistic rendering. That is the basics of Render Workspace in Fusion 360. But as we move on further, we have a lot of different materials and we have a lot of different principles of photorealistic rendering to explore. So while this screw or this bolt gets rendered over here in Fusion 360, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a new design. I'm going to click on a new design, and now going to the data panel, I'm going to open a new file or a different file to start rendering with. Now I want everyone to open the ring with blue diamond, this file. So just let it get opened in the software. I hope everyone is following along. If you are following along, just put a thumbs up in the live chat so that everyone knows that you are following along and we can keep a track of your attendance. If you are not able to follow along, if the pace is a little bit higher for you, you can definitely pay attention to what is happening. And as the live stream is going to be saved on YouTube and everywhere else, you'll be able to see it even if the live stream ends, and you'll be able to follow it at your own pace. So yes, make sure that you are following along and make sure that you are making the most out of this. You are making the most out of this workshop and this series of Autodesk Fusion 360 brought to you by Autodesk Community Philippines. All right. So yes, as you can see over here, we have the ring with blue diamond, just like you can see in the thumbnail. It has been opened now in Fusion 360. Now I don't really need this untitled file, so I can just cross it so that I don't get to see it popping up in between. Whereas I am going to keep this file in background so that it gets rendered in the background and I don't really have to mess with the file now. Moving on to the new file that we have opened, the ring with the blue diamond. So as you can see, it is a very basic ring with some appearances applied to it. So if you want to see which appearances are applied to this body, you can either in the design workspace itself, you can go to modify dropdown and you can go to appearance, or you can just simply press A on your keypad. That is a shortcut for appearances. So as you can see, there are a lot of appearances that have been applied over here. But as you can see, the main appearances are basically the crystal over here and the ring that is probably made out of platinum or silver. So if you are unsure of which materials are applied over here, and if you really don't want all of these materials which cannot be seen, so you can just simply click on each material and right click, delete, right click, delete. So each material, each appearance you can just unassign and delete, so that you have a clean design with all the base appearances, and then you can assign the values, or you can assign the appearances depending on your requirements. So again, yes, I'm going to unassign and delete everything so that we have a clean design. All right, so as you can see, now we just have silver and steel. So why do we have silver and steel, these two materials? Is because the physical material of this body is silver. That is why we have silver material assigned as the appearance to the silver body. But of course, if you want, you can change it. But for that, you'll have to delete the physical material first. So if we just ignore that part and if we just keep it like this, it is not really going to bother our design. Now what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to add it or give it a gold metal appearance. So in the library, I can just simply search for gold. And here, as you can see in Fusion 360 Appearance Library, I have this option for gold polished. So I can just simply drag it and drop it on the outer body of the ring. And as you can see, the moment I drag it and drop it on the ring, the material or the appearance of gold has been applied over here, while the physical material is still silver, but the appearance is now gold. And same way with the diamond, as you can see, the diamond has been applied with the material of silver, which I don't want. So to change the material of the diamond, again, I'm going to go to the search bar and I'm going to change the appearance to a gemstone. So you can type gemstone over here. Yes, so we have gemstone diamond, we have gemstone crystal, we have emerald, ruby, sapphire, all of these gemstones we have. So depending on which gemstone you are looking for, you can change it. So let's say we want a sapphire over here. So I can just simply drag it and drop it on this body. So now, as you can see, we have a gold ring with a sapphire diamond on top of it. Now that you are done with it, you can just simply click on save so that the file gets saved. And following the exact same things that we have done in the previous design, you are going to go to the design drop down, go to the render workspace, and the moment you enter in the rendering workspace, you may see that there are certain settings that have been applied already, or in your case they might not be applied depending on what settings you have chosen. In my case, as I've set defaults in the software, whenever I open the rendering gallery, it opens with the default settings that I have set. Anyway, if you want to change the setup, you can go to scene settings. You can change it from environment to solid color depending on your requirement again. But make sure that even if you are changing it to solid color, make sure that you can still apply any environment, because the light that you're getting is from the environment. So currently the light I'm getting is from sharp highlights. I can get it from photo booth. So as you can see, even if the background is solid color, but the lighting conditions that I'm getting is from the environment itself. So I can get it either from photo booth or from rim highlights. Whatever looks better, I can use that. So personally, I feel that rim highlights or photo booth is going to look better. Photo booth kind of looks better, but there are certain patches which don't really look good. So you can go to settings, you can go to position, and you can just simply change the position and from where the light is falling on the object, so that you can avoid all of these irregular patches, and you can actually show where the light is falling on the object. So I think the light should fall somewhere at 10.5 degrees. So I'm going to set it at 10.5 degrees. Once I'm done, I'm going to click on position once again. Of course, I want ground plane. I want to flatten the ground. Now reflections, the roughness is zero point 0.8, which is a lot. So I'm going to take it down to maybe 0.15. And yeah, so that has been applied. Now taking a look at camera is always set as per perspective. Focal length is 9. Exposure value is 8.8. Depth of field, again, I don't really need a depth of field right now, so I'm good with it. Now talking about the background. So as you can see, background, it is solid color, and the color for the background is this gray color. But if you want, you can change the color from gray to maybe yellow, or any color that you want. So if you want um, yellow, so you can just apply yellow like this. As you can see, yellow is going to get applied. If you want blue, you can go to blue from the color swatch, and you can apply blue color. But of course, it is not going to look good. It is not going to look very, very appealing as a render, because I also want to make it look good as a render. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this handle, and I'm going to set the background somewhere in a darker gray shade. So if I click on apply, as you can see, this is good, but I want it a bit more darker. So I'll go to maybe 42, 42, 42. That is the RGB combination to get this color. If I click on apply, as you can see, it is a bit more darker. Once you're done, you can click on OK, and you can click on close. Now, as you can see, the appearance have been applied. The light condition has been set by the environment, which is photo booth. Again, if you feel that you want to change it, you can go to environment library, and you can always change it without a second thought. But I feel photo booth is good, so we are going to keep it at photo booth. You have set all of the ground plane conditions. You have set the background color as a solid color, and the color is this dark gray color. Now, to just have a quick look at it, how it is going to look after being rendered. So you can just click on this in canvas render button, and it is going to start the rendering for this ring. And as you can see, it looks kind of good, but I want the background color to be a bit more darker, because if it is a bit more darker, it is going to look better, is what I feel. So by the looks of it in the in canvas render, I think that the background color should be a little bit more darker shade of gray. So I'm going to stop the rendering. Again, going to the scene settings, and color, I'm going to make it a bit more darker, probably 30, 30, 30, or even 28. So yes, you can do all of that changes over here. So I've made it 28, and if I apply, it is now a bit more darker shade, and I feel that is going to be okay. So I can just zoom into the object that I want to work with. Again, now this is a ring. You won't want to render it in a way that it is, standing up somewhat like this. You won't really want to render it in this position where it is seen that it is standing up on its own, because again, being a ring, it is heavy, and it is unbalanced, and it may fall to the ground in some position like this. So I have already applied that principle over here. As you can see, it is also laying flat on the ground in this way, as it would in real world conditions. So after applying all of that, and after applying all of these settings, I feel that we are good to render now. So I can go to render, and again print 8.4 megapixel. That is the highest quality of render available. So I can now start rendering on cloud. As you can see, I'm using cloud renderer to render this on cloud in the background. Again, if you go to the rendering gallery from the bottom over here, you'll be able to see that the rendering has been scheduled just a few seconds before, and it is going to take some time to get rendered. So in the meanwhile, let's have a look at this render of the screw that we have created. Let's see how it looks and whether it is how we wanted it to look. So yes, after you click on the rendered image, as you can see, this is the render that we were able to generate. And looking at this, it looks good. It looks, it looks decent because of the black oxide. I can see very gentle reflections over here, and the shadow is also very soft. And this is how I actually wanted it to look like. So I am okay with this. But if you want the color to be a little bit faded because the black color is a lot, or maybe if you want to change the lighting condition, you can again go to environment library. You can go to probably rim highlights, and in the rim highlights you might get different settings. So because of that, you can see a better version of the render for this particular object. But for the time being, I'm really happy with this, so I can just simply zoom in on the render and I can download it the way I want. So I can just click on the download button. I can download it as a PNG, JPEG, TIFF, and EXR. And I can also have a transparent background if I want. But I don't want a transparent background. I want to download this image as a PNG file. So I'm going to click on PNG and it will prepare the file for download. And once it has prepared the file for download, it will ask you to download it in a location of your choice. So I want it to download in the folder that I've created for the workshop, which is rendering, and I can click on save. So as you can see, the render has been now saved to my system where I can, see or see it or show it to people in the PNG format. So yes, this is about rendering of this basic object. This is very basic form of rendering which you were able to cover. I hope that everyone is able to understand. If you have any questions or if you have any queries, put it in the chat box, and after the session ends, I'll be able to help you with your queries and solve all of your doubts. If you have any other suggestions, if you have any other remarks related to this render, you can also put it in the chat box so that we can discuss it later once the workshop ends. So for the time being, as we are done with the rendering of this object, I can just save it for the one last time, and once the saving is done, I can just simply close this file. And as you can see, rendering is happening on in the background for this ring with blue diamond. So since we are good with this file, now I want you all to open the data panel once again and open the new third design that we want to discuss. So for that, I want you all to open the ornithopter design. Once again, I hope that all of you are following along and everyone is understanding what has been explained. If the speed is a little bit faster for you, or if you are not able to follow along properly, you can always just understand the basic concepts that are being taught in the session. And once the session ends, the live stream will be available for you to watch even once the live stream ends. So you'll be able to watch it as a video at your own pace and follow along on whatever has been taught or whatever has been practiced in this session. So with that being said, as you can see, the ornithopter file has now been opened in the software, and this is the file that we are going to be working on. And I want to render it. Again, as you can see, all of the materials and all of the appearances have already been applied. So the only thing that you have to do right now is go to the render workspace, set up the scene, and start rendering. So as you can see, if you go to rendering gallery, there are no renderings as of now. And if you want to start rendering, again, if you want to change appearance, you can go to appearances column and you can change the appearances depending on your requirements. But I am okay with the applied appearances over here. So I'm not going to do that all over again. Then scene settings. Again, scene settings by default is environment. If you want a solid color, you can go with solid color. Again, if you want it in a bit darker environment, so you can keep it like at 28 like before. You can apply that as the solid color background. Again, if you want reflections, you can set reflections, you can add roughness, or you can reduce roughness, increase roughness depending on your requirement. And the lighting conditions, so for this, the environment or the lights are from sharp highlights. Again, if you want, you can change it to something else like soft light. So it is all about trial and error, how you feel it and how you really imagine it to be. So depending on all of these settings, you can change the environment settings. If you want rim highlights, you can put rim highlights. You can use photo booth, you can use sharp highlights once again. So depending on all of the settings that you are getting, you can change the environment. Again, if you go to settings and if you want to change the position, you can change the position as well. So as you can see, by controlling the position, by controlling the rotation, you are basically controlling the position of the light, and you are controlling the reflections as well on the body. So as you can see, you can control the shadow, you can control the reflections as per your requirements. So personally, I feel that about 36.6 degrees or 36.5 degrees, minus 36.5 degrees is a good option over here. So as I'm done with that, I can click on the position once again, and I have my object ready to start rendering. Now, again, without doing anything, the first thing that I'm going to do is go to in canvas render and see if it is actually looking good, or do I need to make any changes to it. So by the looks of it, the reflections look very good. Both the internal and external reflection on the ground as well. Both are looking good. The shadow is also looking nice and soft. So I feel that we can go ahead with this settings and we don't really have to change anything. But if you feel that you have to change anything, you can change it right now before starting the final render. So I'm going to stop the in-canvas render, and without wasting any time, I'm going to again go to print. I'm going to go to the highest available 8.4 megapixel quality, render with cloud renderer. Render quality is final, and again I'm going to click on render to start it rendering in the background. Now, as this is getting rendered in the background, I also want to show you something. If you go to design workspace once again, and if you see the browser on the left, in the browser, if you go to the top, you will be able to see a folder that says motion studies. And if you click on the drop down for motion studies, there is a motion study called as motion study 1. So basically motion study kind of, it is like a kinematic simulation of your product, where if you have applied the proper joints and you have applied the proper types of joints and relations of the joints, then you will be able to study the motion with respect to all the linkages of the design or of the product. So if I right click on motion study 1 and if I click on edit, you'll be able to see this pop up around over here, which is showing some graphs, some random lines over here. And then if you reduce the speed from the speed slider, and if you play the animation or if you play the motion study, as you can see, this is how the motion study looks. This is how it will look after it starts working, or if it gets animated. If you want to play it in loop, you can just click on this button at the bottom over here to start the motion study in a loop. Now again, if you play it, you'll be able to see all of the moving parts of the design. You can see the wings, you can see the tail, everything properly moving. So this is the motion study of the object, or this is the kinematic analysis of the object. So if you have created a motion study, then you can click on OK. And after the rendering is done, of course, just revert the position first. Once the rendering is done, you will be able to render the still image as a motion study. You'll be able to see it as a motion study, or you'll be able to see it and export it as an animation. So again, for that, we'll have to wait till the render gets finished. We'll wait for the rendering to get done, and then we are going to look at the motion study or the animation form of rendering. In the meanwhile, this is getting rendered in the background. Let's have a look at the ring with blue diamond. Let's see how it looks if it is done. So we have submitted this render 10 minutes ago and it is still taking some time. So probably it is going to take some more time to get rendered finally. So in the meanwhile, when it is getting rendered, I want you all to switch to the design workspace. And as we are talking about some principles for photorealistic rendering, as you can see, if you just keep a black background, then it is not really making it look realistic, right? It is not making it look very original, and it is not making it look like it is a real object in real space. So to make it look real, to make it look a bit more artistic, you can always add some elements to the design or around the design to make the design look more lively and to make the design look more appealing to the user. So In this case, what we are going to do is we are just going to create a sketch from the top view. As you can see, from the top view, I'm going to create a sketch. And the basic thing that I'm going to do over here is add a platform over there. To add a platform, I'm going to create a 2-point rectangle. So using the 2-point rectangle button, I'm able to create a rectangle. I'm plotting one point over here in this corner and one more point over here or over here in this corner. This looks good. So I have created a rectangle, or it may be a square as well. So I have created this body over here, and without making any changes or without doing anything else, I'm just going to click on finish sketch. Again, heading back to the home view, what I'm going to do is press E to extrude the sketch that we have just created and extrude it by minus 25. And as you can see, the operation by default over here is cut. I don't want it to cut the geometry. So I'm going to create a new component. Over here, I'm creating a new component. And I feel that 25 is a little bit less. So maybe we can go with minus 45. That may be very thick. So minus 35 or minus 30. So okay, so minus 30 looks good enough. It looks proportionate and it looks real. So we can go with 30 millimeters or minus 30 millimeters. Operation is new component. And once you're done, you can click on OK. So this is the component that we have created. I want to name it as base. So I'm going to rename it as base. As you can see, I can just simply tap on it once. I can tap on it twice and name it as BAC base. And I can press enter to rename it from component 1 to base. Now talking about this, the bodies of the ring is body 1, that is the diamond, and body 2, that is the main ring. As you can see, it is kind of, it is going through this body which we don't want. So I can just select these bodies and I can press M to move it up or down with with relation to this object or the base object over here. So if I drag it 10 millimeters on top, it looks good enough. I don't think it is, you know, interfering with the design. So let's go with 10 millimeters, go into the front view, go up by 10 millimeters. And once you're done, you can click on OK. So now as you can see, it is properly touching the base and it doesn't look like it is going through the base or it is, merged with the base. So now that this looks good, I want to attach some appearance over here. Now, I personally think that if we apply an appearance of, let's say, a marble or something like that, it would look good. So let's head to modify. Let's go to appearance. And I want to search marble. So marble would be probably in stone. Yeah, so in stone, as you can see, we have a lot of options over here. We have marble, we have rubble, slate, stone, field stone, granite, all of these. So if we go with marble, if I drag it and drop it over here, as you can see, you don't really see it like a marble. It just looks like some plain white body. It doesn't have that surface attributes of a marble. So I don't want it to be this, but there is no other option because as you can see, there is only one marble in Fusion 360 which looks like this. So we don't really want that. I can right click and I can click on this option of unassign and delete. So I'll unassign and delete this. Uh, all right. So probably it has been deleted. Anyway, so yes, this is how it looks, and I don't really want a marble appearance over here, which is by default given to us in Fusion 360. Rather, I want to add a marble appearance of my own. So you can also add certain materials, custom materials, if you have files appropriate for that. So to create a custom material, you can go to modify drop down, and over here you have this option called as manage materials. So I hope that you have downloaded a file that I have shared from Drive, which was basically the folder for material that was a plugin for the material. If you have not downloaded, just go ahead to the Drive and you'll be able to see it. So this is the folder that I'm talking about. If you go to the Marble 4K folder, you'll be able to see these 5 images over here, which you'll have to download for attaching that appearance or for creating that appearance on Fusion 360. So I'll ask you all to download all of that materials, and to start working to add a new material to Fusion 360, just go to modify drop down, go to manage materials, and over here, as you can see, there are a lot of materials that have been already applied or that have already been given to us by Fusion 360. So these are the materials, but of course we are not working with the normal material. We are now adding a custom material of our own. So you can go to appearance tab over here first of all, and once you go to appearance tab over here, you can get this button over here at the bottom that says new generic material. So if you click on this drop down over here, you get this option of creating a new generic material. So just click on new generic material. If you just take this window over here to the side, as you can see, yeah, so we have the name as default generic. I'll change it to marble appearance, as you can see, and image. So now it is asking me to upload an image over here. So it is a generic image which is basically going to be the main, visual attribute of the material. So I'm going to click on this image and I'm going to go where I have installed the plugin, which is marble 10 4K, and from here I want to attach probably this one, 4K marble diffuse. So this is what I want. I can just click on open over here, and as you can see, this is how it is going to look. You can also see it on the cube over here, the material after it is applied. I can change the attributes like image fade. I can make it darker. I can make it brighter. I can reduce or increase its glossiness. So I'll probably keep it at 50 or 50, 60 depending on your requirement. Highlight, it is a non-metallic element. Then reflectivity, I don't really want to make it reflective because it is a marble and marble is normally rough. So I don't want it to be very reflective like the preview over here. So I'm going to uncheck the reflectivity column. Then transparency, of course, it is not going to be transparent, something like this. So we don't want transparency either. Then we have cutouts. So cutouts, in this case, we can use either the displacement or the specular file depending on what you want. So if you want more texture, then I'll suggest you go with the specular file. So if you open it, you will not be able to see it over here properly, but as you can see in the cutouts, in the cutout regions, you'll be able to see this black appearance. If you want, you can keep this, but I don't think we need a cutout because I like this appearance overall as it is. So that is also not an issue. We don't want self illumination. We don't want it to be illuminating like it is a body. It is, it is like a bulb. So we don't want that. So again, uncheck on self illumination. What we really want is bump. So bump basically, as I said, if you want to have a texture to it, if you zoom in, if you want to have a texture to it, then you can use either specular or displacement file. I think specular would look good enough. So if we click on OK, as you can see, you won't be able to notice it right over here, but it is going to kind of add to the texture of this appearance. So you can increase the amount of it to 1000, if you can decrease it. So at minus 1000, as you can see, it looks very coarse, and at plus 1000, as you can see, it looks very smooth. So we don't want it to look very smooth, we don't want it to look very coarse. So maybe we can keep it somewhere in between, maybe at 400. 400 would look good enough, I guess. So yes, 400 it is. If you want, again, you can increase or decrease depending on how the material looks, but for the time being, I feel that it looks good enough. And with the tint, I want the tint color to be, the thing that has been described over here in the generic material image. I don't want any other color, or I don't want any other tint, so I can uncheck the tint as well. So I have added a bump image. I have added a generic, the main feel or main look of the image. Once I'm done, I can click on apply and I can click on OK. Once I'm done, as you can see over here, the appearance has been added to marble appearance in my favorites tab. So once you are done with adding the material, to use that material you'll have to go to appearances, and instead of fusion material library or fusion appearances, you'll have to go to my favorites. And this in favorites you'll be able to see your material that you have added, which is marble appearance. This one I can just simply drag it and drop it over here. So as you can see, it has an appearance of a marble. It looks a little bit rough, just the way we wanted it to look. And also I also have some materials that I have made previously. So just like this same procedure, using the same procedure, you will be able to add and manage different materials depending on your requirements. Just like now we have made a marble. So once you're done with this, you can close the appearance tab. You can save the design so that whatever changes you have made gets saved on the server. And once you're done, again from design workspace, go to the render workspace. And as you can see, it looks somewhat like this now. Again, if you want to have a look at it before rendering, you can always go to in canvas render and start rendering it on your local system. So as you can see, the in-canvas rendering has started, and this is how the marble is going to look, and this is how the ring is going to look on top of the marble. As you can see, we can, see a very light shadow or a reflection of that diamond on the marble as well, which basically means that the surface is not very sharp or it is not very blunt. It is just good enough as a marble to show, some little reflections of the object. So we are good with this. I can pause the in canvas render. I can stop it. And one thing, I don't want these reflections now. So I can go to scene settings and I can turn off the reflections from here so that we don't get those reflections on the ground plane. And now once you're done, once you've added the element over here, now again you can go to render. Again, choosing 8.4 megapixel, that is the highest quality. You can click on render and start rendering on cloud. So this was the second principle of photorealistic rendering. First is, of course, placing the element in a way that it would look or it would be in the physical space. So like in the case of screw, it cannot stand upright on its own. So it is always going to be falling down on the surface and it is going to be falling at a slant angle. So you have to do that. In the case of ring as well, the same thing has been applied, that it won't be staying up straight. So you have to place it down on the ground. So that is the first principle. And second principle is adding elements to make it look more realistic, to make it look better than just the object being in the rendering workspace. To make it look more natural, we can add certain elements. And as this rendering is now scheduled, you can see the previous rendering is done now. And if you open the rendering, it looks somewhat like this. So it looks very good. As you can see, we have the gold material which is properly shining in the in the direction of light which we applied from the environment. This is the diamond is also looking good. It is transparent, so it is not really like it is not a solid body. You can see it's some internal reflections of light as well. Over here you can see very faint reflections on the ground. So overall it looks good. So if you are happy with this, you can always download this as an image in PNG format or JPEG format or any other format that you want to save it as. I am downloading it as a PNG file format, and I'm going to save it on the rendering live stream folder in my system. So yes, as it is getting rendered now, let's see the progress of our ornithopter design. So yes, as you can see, even the ornithopter has been designed and the render has been done now. All right. So after opening the render, as you can see, it is looking somewhat like this. Again, the same things. The shadows are very faint. Also, the glass body over here, it is reflecting properly. The other parts, which are, you know, of solid bodies or solid materials, they are reflecting the light properly as well. So I personally feel this is correct, and I want to download it as a PNG on my system once again. So I can click on download image as PNG and you can save it in your system. I hope that everyone is following till this part. And if you have any queries or if you have any doubts, again, I'll encourage all of you to put your doubts, put your queries in the chat box. I'll be able to help you with your queries and your doubts once the session ends. So stay tuned till the end, and I'll be able to help you with your queries and your doubts. If you're not able to follow on till this point, you can always take a look at the recorded session afterwards once the live session ends, so that you can practice it at your own pace. All the files have been shared to you, so you can use those files as the reference and you can practice it on your own by following all the steps at your own pace. All right, so as you can see, the rendering has been done. And as you know, we were talking about the motion study. So in the design workspace, we were able to see it happening properly. We were able to see the kinematic animation of it properly. And now I want to show it in a rendered form, or I want to show it in a, in a video form. I want to download it on my system. So to do that, we have this option over here in the rendered image. We have this option called as render as a motion study and render as a turntable render. So turntable render is basic animation of this object just turning around in 360 degrees, and motion study is the motion study that we had created, which is going to get rendered and saved as an animation. So if you want to save it as an animation, you can render it as a motion study. And as you can see, we can just use 16 cloud credits per request, and the given settings are about 213 cloud credits. In this case, we cannot use a local cloud, we cannot use a local rendering. So we have to use cloud rendering, and for that, we need cloud credits. And as it is going way beyond the permissible limit of the cloud credits, we'll have to adjust the settings over here. So I'll have to reduce the image size to maybe 48 megapixels or 70 megapixels. Okay, 79 is a lot. Maybe 62 megapixels. Yeah, so 62 megapixels fits in the category. Render quality is standard. We want it to be final. Okay, so if we make it final, then again the required cloud credits increase. So let's try with 48 megapixels. Again, in that case, it is a lot. So let's stick with standard render quality and image size as 62.1 megapixels. And once you're done, you can click on render. And again, as it is a cloud render, it is going to start in the background. As you can see over here, it is going to start in the background and it will render. Once it gets rendered, you can again watch it like a normal video. And if you want, you can download it as an MP4 file in your system. Let's have a look at this render, how it is working. Okay, so there's still some time for this render to get finished. So in the meanwhile, when all of these renders are getting rendered in the background, just of course all of the changes that you have made, you want to save it, so just click on the save button so that all of the changes that you've made get saved on the system or they get saved on the cloud. All right, now the next thing that we want is the final file. So in the meanwhile these files are getting rendered in the background, we'll open the desk lamp, which is the final file for rendering. So I want to open the desk lamp file, and we are going to work on this. We are going to apply some appearances, we are going to change the materials, and after it has been rendered, after all of these materials have been applied and appearances have been applied, we are going to render it and see how it looks after it gets rendered. So to apply materials and to apply some appearances, you can always go to physical material. To start with applying the physical materials, now, in this case, I want the physical material for the base to be plastic. So I'll go to plastic and I'll select acetyl resin black. So I've applied this material for the base. Also over here on these two hinges. So I'm going to apply this on both the bodies, as you can see. Now on all these links, I want the material to be wood. So I can go to wood over here, and I am going to try with cherry how it looks. Cherry wood looks very good, so I'm going to work with cherry on all of these linkages over here as well. Okay, so here I don't want to apply cherry. I want to apply acetal black resin. So I'm going to change the appearance to black over here. So as you can see, this is how it is going to look somewhat like this. And over here, I want it to be a fabric. So I can go to fabric in my library, and the fabric, I am going to keep it as probably linen white. So this is the fabric material that I'm applying over there. Or you can just simply apply a normal fabric or a canvas depending on your requirements. I guess canvas would look better. So let's apply canvas over there. And if you see inside, we have a bulb over here. So we want to apply an appearance with the bulb. Now for the bulb, if you know, bulb is going to emit some light. So we cannot really apply any physical material over here, but rather we can apply an appearance. So for that, go to modify drop down, go to appearance, or press A on your keyboard as a shortcut to enter the appearance toolbar over here. And as I said, I want to apply an appearance of an LED of a bulb on this bulb over here. So for that, I'm going to search. um let's search luminescence. Sorry. So we don't have that. So we'll search for emissive. Yeah. So in emissive, as you can see, we have all of these different types of emissive, uh, you can say emissive appearances. We have LED red, we have LED green, we have LED blue. Then we have a normal, white LED, and then we also have A type bulb, which is frosted. So depending on what you want, you can change it over here. Now again, you also have 800 lumens. Like, you also have the intensity of the bulb. 1500 lumen is of course going to be brighter than 800 lumen, and over here as well, 50 lumen SMD light is always going to be brighter than frosted 800 lumen light. So I think we should apply 800 lumen for the time being, and we'll see how it looks. If we think that the light needs to be brighter, then we'll change it to probably 1500 lumen frosted bulb, or a normal SMD bulb, depending on how it looks. So as all of these appearance have been applied, I'll go to save all of these changes that I've made in the design. And now I'm going to head to the render workspace. All right. So this is how it is going to look in the render workspace. Again, quickly making all of the changes in the environment and in the background. So now, right now, as you can see, the environment brightness of the light is 1000 lumen. Now, if I show the light inside this lamp in a bright environment, then it is not going to be seen properly. So for that, I'll have to make it a bit darker environment over here. So from 1000 lumen, we can switch it to probably 200 lumens, or even 150 lumens. Let's see how 150 lumens look. So 150 lumen looks better. The background is environment. Let's see which environment has been applied. It is photo booth. We can have rim highlights, or we can have grid light. But I guess photo booth would look better. So we'll work with that. Again, brightness is going to be 150 lumen itself. Position doesn't really matter because it is a dark environment anyway. So position doesn't really matter. The only thing that you can do with the position is the reflection of this nuts and bolts over here. So you can control that using the rotation. So if you want, you can rotate it in a way that the nuts and bolts get highlighted and they reflect light, so it looks a little bit better. So something like this, probably at minus 75 degrees. I would keep it at minus 75 degrees. And again, so background, it is environment. If you don't want it to be environment, you can keep it as solid color. And again, you can keep it as a very dark background. So I'll keep it at 33 in this case. I'll apply and I'll click on OK. Um, I want the reflections over here. The roughness is 0.2, so that is also correct. And also rest other settings, I feel that they are correct as well, so I won't mess with those settings now. I'm going to click on close, and I'm going to start an in canvas render over here to just have a look of how it is going to look after it is going to get rendered. So as you can see, you can have a look of the inner light properly, and it is all good. But I personally feel that the intensity of the light should be increased, and the environment brightness should be decreased furthermore. So let's do that. I'll stop the render. I'll go to appearance, and instead of a 800 lumen bulb, we are going to go with a frosted 1500 lumen bulb over here. We can remove the 800 lumen bulb for our convenience. And in the scene setup, we are going to keep the environment brightness at 100 lumens, and the background solid color should be a little bit more less, a little bit more darker, probably 25. So we'll change it manually to 25 and apply. Click on OK, click on close, and again, just have a look at rendering and using the in-canvas render. So yes, as you can see, using a brighter bulb makes it look more realistic now. It makes it look a little bit brighter, and making the background environment as dull also helps us to, highlight the internal bulb even more. And it definitely looks like a good lamp. So again, I don't think so we need to make any changes. I can pause and stop the in-canvas render, and I can render it as a final rendered image at 8.4 megapixel using cloud rendering, and I can render it and see how it looks after it gets rendered. In the meanwhile, this is getting rendered. Let's have a look at the ring with blue diamond after adding this base. So let's see if this is done. So yes, as you can see, the rendering has been done. So it looks something like this now. So if you compare it with the previous render, you'll of course see that there's a lot of difference because of the internal lighting conditions as well. So it looks much more better than this. This is just the render of a ring. But if you were to show these two renders, the person will always prefer this render because the ring looks brighter. The base also adds as an element to the render that looks good, and it looks more appealing and more photorealistic. So that is about the ring over here. Again, if you want, you can just download it as a PNG image on your system, and you can save it on your system. So download it as a PNG file and save it in the folder. All right. So this is done. Once you're done with this, you can close the design so that you just have the ornithopter and the desk lamp in your view. Also looking at the ornithopter, as you can see, the motion study has also been rendered now. So if you click on the motion study render and if you open it, you'll be able to see it like this, and you'll be able to play it as a video. So as you can see, it is a bit jittery and it is a bit laggy. It is because we use a bit of a, low quality render. But once you download it as an MP4 file, it is going to be much better compared to what you are seeing it as a preview. So instead of seeing it over here as a preview, we can just simply download study motion as a video, and we are going to download it as a MP4 video on our system so that we can have a look at it in a better way. All right, so I'll save it in the folder, and I'll directly have a look at it from the folder itself. So I'll go to the folder, and if you look at all the renders that we have saved, so yeah, this is the first render of the screw. It is how it is, like this is how it looks. If you want, you can crop the image to just focus on the screw itself, something like this. So post processing can always be done, and again, depending on your requirements and depending on the softwares that you use. You can change all of the settings. Like if you use Photoshop as well, you can make some more changes over here as well to make it look a little bit more better. So this is about the screw. Then this is the ornithopter. Again, the same thing. You can go to edit and you can just crop it so that the main object is in focus. Rest everything is, the blank space is basically deleted. So yeah, this is the render as you can see. Then this is the video. As you can see, the video looks much better and much cleaner compared to the preview that we were able to see in Fusion 360. So it is a bit more smooth. Of course, if you want to make any changes, if you know any video editing software, you can make changes to it. You can slow it down, you can speed it up again as you need. So this is about the motion study rendering. Then this is the ring. Again, the same thing. I'll suggest you just crop all of these to keep the main object in focus. So this is how it looks, and this is the one after adding the background element of the marble. And you can see it looks much better compared to the previous one. I'll just save it and we'll see the comparison, this one and this one. Of course, I would prefer this one because it looks much more better and it looks much more lively and much more realistic. So between these, I would always prefer this one. Also, I have also made some render of that ring with some added elements as well. So I'll just show it to you. You can do it by yourself as well. You can try it. It is not a very difficult form to render. So as you can see, the same ring I have rendered from a different view, a different perspective, and it looks something like this. Then from a different angle, it looks like this. Then with a different material of a silver instead of gold, it looks something like this with the background, with the base also of sand. I have applied the appearance of sand over here, and as you can see, I have applied depth of field. So these front areas are in focus, and rest everything in the background gets blurred a little bit. So yes, this is one type of render. And over here, as you can see, I have added certain leaves in the front and in the background so that it also adds as an element of this render, and it makes it look even more realistic, and it makes it look more appealing for the customer, whoever is going to use this render for, like, for any purpose, like for advertising campaigns or for just posting it on social media, or wherever they use it. It is going to look much better compared to just the render of a ring, because there are certain elements in the design in the render which makes it look more lively. So over here we have some plants. So again, as you can see, the depth of field have been applied over here, where the main objects of the marble and the ring are in focus, and the leaves and everything else is slightly out of focus. So yes, I had to design these leaves in the background to add on as an element in the rendering. Same way with this one, I have designed the leaves in a way that it adds on as an element in the render. This have been designed in Fusion 360, and it has been rendered along with this ring. So as you can see all of the reflections of the leaves on the ring as well. If you would have done this in Photoshop, it would have taken a lot of time, as well as it wouldn't have looked this real, because if you render it in Fusion 360, you can get all of the shadows and this reflections by default, so it kind of saves a lot of your work. So yeah, this is about principles of rendering, and this is about photorealistic rendering using Fusion 360. So these are certain renders that I wanted to show to all of you guys, and I wanted to kind of motivate all of you to make renders something like this. Also, one of my designs which I rendered again in Fusion 360, it looks something like this. So this is like a car, convertible car, and over here, as you can see, I have applied some LED lights. Again, these are white bulbs basically. So I am able to get the shadow of the wheels, and I'm able to get this light properly in a way that I wanted. Same way from the front view. From the back view, I added the red LEDs, the normal red LEDs. So it is looking something like this. So yes, you can always experiment with a lot of different, different materials, different appearances, different backgrounds, and different designs, how all of these appearances look. And if you feel that they are good enough for your particular purpose, then you can just always, render it and make the render look as good and as natural as possible over here. So yeah, this is how it looks. There are some lights in the base as well over here. So this is how it looks from the front view. So yeah, these are basically the renders that I want to see from you all. I want you all to make renders something like this. Even after watching this tutorial, after following this tutorial, I don't want to stop you guys over here. I want you to make changes to these designs. I want you to make, certain add or delete certain elements from this design to make them look more natural and more attractive for any user. And if you are able to get a very good render, I would always encourage you all to share your renders with me on LinkedIn, or with Mechani Web on LinkedIn, or on any other platform, on Facebook, on Twitch, everywhere that you can share. I want you all to share your work, and I want to see how good or how well you were able to work with this render and make it as lively and as attractive as possible. So yes, this is about the ornithopter. Let's see if the desk lamp has been rendered now. Okay, so it is about to get rendered. Probably it will take a minute or so. So I hope that we are about to get done with the session. So I hope that you have all your doubts ready. If you have any queries, I'll suggest you all to put your queries and doubts on the chat box, so that I'll be able to help out with your queries and your doubts at the end of the session. And you can just, get yourself clear before you start practicing and following all of the things that you were taught in the session. So wherever you're watching live, either Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube, wherever you're watching, just make sure that you post all of your comments about this, or if you have any queries, doubts, you can post all of these on the live chat, so that I get to know if you have any doubts, and I will be able to solve it at the end of the session. Again, for those who are not able to follow along properly, if you had any queries, or if you were not able to follow along probably because of the pace, then you can always go back after the live session is ended. You can always go back to the channel, and you can see the previous sessions that get recorded and saved on the channel, either on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. You can go back and always refer to those and follow it at your own pace. So by the looks of it, as you can see over here, this is how it is going to look. You can see a gentle reflection on the ground. You can see the light passing, properly on the ground, in a way that the base is also kind of illuminated, and all the other elements also are getting highlighted properly. So I feel that this is good. After the rendering has been done, I'll personally crop it in a way that the reflection of the bulb isn't seen on the ground. So it's your personal choice. If you want, you can keep it. If you don't want, you can just crop it so that you just have the main lamp and a little bit of the light glare in the background, for showing it as a lamp or as a bulb inside the lamp. So this is it. I guess it is going to take around 2 to 3 more minutes to get finally rendered, to be able to save it on your system. So that's it for today. I hope you were able to understand. If you have any queries, or if you had any doubts, you can always share it on the live chat, and I'll be able to clear your doubts.
Seeing that we have like our first question here from a user, from a particular user. So the question goes as follows. So sir, what advice can you give if this particular user is still a novice on photorealistic like rendering? What are the features of this rendering can they explore in order to get a grasp or a sense that the colors are blending right, or that they make sure that the shadow is projected properly, or the light in the vehicle is projected properly?
Okay, so that is very interesting question. So yes, to make it look more realistic, to add in or blend it into the main environment, you of course have to first of all see it as all about visualization. right now, if you have seen in the renders that we have created, we either use a solid background or we used an environment which was like a basic plain environment. But if you used environments like the crossroads or environment like the skylight or any other environment which basically puts the object or the design in the actual environment, or in the actual space, you can say. So in that case, you have to take an account of the lighting conditions of that particular environment. You have to usually it's all about visualization, how you visualize it. So if the object, for example, it is placed on a snow field, so in a snow field, you cannot use a warm light. The default light that has been shown in the Fusion 360 environment, we have to use that. And again, by rotating the snow field, what we can show is basically different projections of the object. Like, I'll show it to you actually by sharing my screen. Please allow me to share my screen. I think it is a very interesting query, and we should, like, make it more clear to the audience over here. So yeah, while we are at it, as you can see, the rendering for the desk lamp has been done, and I'll quickly show you the rendered output of this image, and then I'll show you what I mean when we are talking about custom environments and other external environments, and how to blend in all of these objects in these custom environments. I'll just switch off my camera because it takes a lot of my. So yeah, this is the image. I'll download it as a PNG file on my system. And of course, as I said, I'm going to be cropping just the main part of the rendered file. So as you are able to see, all of the renders that we have made currently, all of these renders either have a solid color background or they have an environment background, where we cannot really see the object in a real physical space. We can see it in a space, we can see it in a physical space like a studio or something like that, but we cannot see it in like a real outside environment where you'll be seeing this object probably. So you'll be able to see this probably on a desk somewhere because it is a desk lamp. So to make it more realistic, of course, we can use a desk as the background and all, but we were not able to cover that because of the time constraint, because that part takes a lot of time. Probably 2 or 3 different sessions would have gone just to create the background environment in a way that we want. So in a quick nutshell, I'll try to explain your query. So yeah, after cropping it, it looks something like this, much better than what we were able to see in Fusion 360. Anyway, irrespective of anything, now let's go to environment and let's add. Now with this case, I don't think so any out of these environments would look good. So let's work with something else. Let's work with ornithopter. Okay, so I am opening the ornithopter design. As you can see, with this ornithopter design, I'm again going to go to the render workspace. Yeah, so after you head back into the render workspace, as you can see, the settings you are working on previously are kept like this. They haven't changed or they haven't gotten back to their defaults. These are the settings that we were working on previously, and they are as it is over here. Now, as I want to change the scene, I'm going to go to scene settings. I'm going to go to environment library, and from there I am going to go to the field. So I'll have to download the field environment over here, and once it gets downloaded, I'm going to drag it and drop it in the main environment area over here. Just wait for the environment to get applied. But as you can see, you are able to see the lighting conditions of that field and all, but you are not able to see it in the background. It is because the background is set to solid color. So instead of solid color, click on the drop down and select environment. And as you can see, after you select environment, now this is the part where I'm actually trying to, you know, solve your query. So you want to blend it in with the environment. So if you want to blend it in with the environment, first thing what you'll have to do is get rid of these reflections, because in a field, in a grass, you are not able to see reflections like this. So first thing you are going to do is go to settings, get rid of flatten ground first of all, because you don't want it to be flattened, you want it to be 3D environment. So uncheck flatten ground, uncheck the reflections because you don't want to see any reflections over there. Then again, ground plane, of course you are going to need a ground plane. We don't want it to be shown in air as of now, so we are going to show ground plane to get reflections. And again, position, so as I said, you can change the position like this of the environment. But in changing the position, what you are exactly doing is you are just actually rotating the environment in 360 degrees, but on the z axis you are changing it. So if you want it, let's say if you want a different view of the environment, then how you are going to do that? So as we want to blend it in with the environment properly, first of all, as you can see, I can change the view to probably this angle so that it looks, the object looks closer and all. But as you can see, again, the problem is that it looks that it is in air. So again, we'll have to, minimize it so that it looks far away from the camera, something like this. That is the first thing. Now I'll have to move it in a way that it rotates a bit so that I get its angular view, I'll say. So components, I'm going to select all of the components together, or I can just select it from the browser. I can shift and select all of these, press M to move, and I'm going to move it something like this. I'll see if that works. That should actually work. Okay, it is not working, probably because I have grounded it over here. As you can see, I've grounded it, so that is why it is happening. Never mind. So yes, you can do all of that settings. You can change your camera view like this. Again, you'll have to minimize it depending on your camera view. You have to minimize or maximize the object so that it looks real and life size. So I feel that at this particular size, it looks real and it looks a little bit life sized. So we can work with this. Now, white color is not really blending well with the background. So what you can do is you can go to appearance, and instead of ABS white over here, you can change it to black. So we'll go to ABS white. As you can see, we are going to click on edit, and instead of white, I'm going to make it as black. So as you can see, all of these parts, they got converted to black. And powder coat rough, again it is going to be black. So yeah, as you can see, all of that materials and all of those changes have been applied. So now it is standing out in this environment, and it is standing out by blending in the environment, I would say, because the background of the field is looking better, and also the ornithopter is looking good because of the black color. The colors are kind of in a contrast, as you said, and you are able to visualize the product better. Again, now the glass body, if you don't want a glass body because you're not able to visualize it properly, you can change it to some other color, or a little bit opaque. You can increase the opacity. So you can again go to appearance, and we have the acrylic glass clear over here. We can edit it, and we can increase the refractive index, or we can increase the roughness of it to make it a little bit opaque or translucent, I can say. And if you click on done, as you can see, it is looking a bit opaque now compared to before, of course. And now if you click on close, I won't suggest you to drag it like this over here. If you drag it like this, then again you'll have to change some settings. So if you want it in center, just keep it like this, and after it is getting rendered, after the rendering is done, you can then crop it to this position to get it in the center. If you get it in the center like this, then it is going to look like it is in air. If you can see, it is going to look like if it it is in air. You don't want that. You don't want to make it look like it is floating in air. You want to make it look like it is stationary on a ground. So something like this, it would work. Now again, just quickly make an in canvas render to see how it is going to look after it gets rendered. So yeah, as you can see, it is going to look something like this. With the opacity of the glass increased, it is going to look like a frosted glass, and the black ABS panels make it look make it look in the contrast with the background of the environment. So this is basically how you render when you have a background, when you have you know an abstract background to work with during the renderings. So these are basic things that you use to make it blend in with the environment and make it stand out. And once you are done, of course, you can go to render, and you can render it at the highest possible settings. Click on render and wait for about 10 to 20 minutes while it gets rendered on the cloud. So I hope I was able to clear it to you in a very short, in a very brief manner. And I hope that you were able to understand the basic query which you had. So yeah, I guess that solves your doubt.
Yes, thank you very much for our user, for one of our like viewers rather, for being able to raise that question. And indeed, Mr. Ram Agarwal was able to provide like a comprehensive like response as well. And of course, like as what like Mr. Ram has mentioned, like a lot of these like features in Fusion 360 for photorealistic rendering cannot be like crammed in just like one session. So perhaps like
Right.
hopefully we can see more of like Sir Ram Agarwal in terms of photorealistic rendering, hopefully in future sessions as well. And of course, while waiting for more questions, or perhaps we can accommodate like one more question from our audience. Given this question, what advantages do you see more by using Fusion 360 over other CAD software as well?
All right. So yeah, you correctly mentioned that in rendering, Fusion 360 poses a certain advantages. So the first thing that you were able to experience from the workshop itself is that you can manage and you can add appearances as well. So if you don't find a material, or if you don't find an appearance that suits your needs in the software, then you can of course add different materials on your own. That is the first thing that gives you flexibility to add more materials, to add more appearances, to make your renders look a bit better and the way you imagine them to be. That is the first thing. And second thing is, of course, as I mentioned, that Fusion 360 being a cloud based software, it helps you render on the cloud. So rendering is a very processor heavy, processor intensive process, and it takes a lot of your processing power. And if you are running the software on a low end system, if the PC or the laptop that you are using has low specs, then it may not be able to render fast, or it may not be able to render in a proper manner. So for that, if you can of course use cloud rendering feature on Fusion 360, because it is a cloud software, so you can always use the cloud rendering feature to save the processing power that is required on your system, in physical, rather than doing rendering locally. You can do it on the software. Also, for the third thing that you mentioned correctly, that I mentioned about other softwares as well. So Photoshop can't really be called as a rendering software. Photoshop I suggested just for cleaning up of the images. So if you see that you want to make a minor color adjustment, so instead of heading back to Fusion 360 and then playing with the background colors or playing with the small settings, rather than doing that, you can always use image editing software, I would say, like Photoshop, for example, which can which can be used for post processing of the rendering, to make it look exactly like the way you want it. So that is the significance of using other image editing softwares to kind of polish your renders. Photoshop, I don't think so it should be used for rendering, because it is not a professional tool as compared to Autodesk Fusion 360.
Okay, thank you very much, Elisa Jean, for raising that question. I hope that that response sufficiently answers that concern as well. And of course, I think that the main takeaway, or I think that one thing that Mr. Ram has pointed here for our users, because I think that other users can have like their concerns that like how can I start with Vision 360 to begin with if my laptop is not high end or don't have a lot of specifications. So I think that as what like Mr. Ram has mentioned, given that this is like a cloud based a software, or they're able to render through like the cloud-based approach versus like the local one. At least through by using like the cloud-based approach, it doesn't take up like a lot of processing like power in your particular device as well. So indeed, like
Right.
that's a very indeed like that's a leverage that you can take into consideration by using Vision 360 as well. So yeah, that's really like a great takeaway of course. And I really do think that by photorealistic like rendering, given that for example like we want to have like a more visceral or once again like a vivid of course like perception of reality indeed, given that this is something that's being enabled by technology right now. So of course like thanks to this particular updates, we get to experience like virtually these objects rather than just like being able to simply like draw them like at hand, or of course like being able to do these things with like let's say the absence of shadow whatsoever. And of course like this becomes like more appealing towards like other people as well. So I guess like we still do have like other questions. Time check, it's 9:23 p.m. here in the Philippine Standard Time, while it's 6:53 p.m. in India Standard Time. So once again, thank you very much to our audience who are sticking for us for the past 2 hours. And of course, we're still open for more questions as well. And if indeed if indeed you have like more questions beyond this live stream, and we're going to plug in more our once again our Facebook page, the Facebook group rather, and of course the LinkedIn group, like the Fusion 360 worldwide users, and you get the opportunity, and of course like a very valuable one, to connect with Ram Agarwal and other CAD designers as well, to be able to show it to each other, and of course we build like a sense of belongingness towards this community as we of course like as we attain like our goal here in Autodesk Community Philippines to build and train like 1 million users indeed. Um, so yeah, I guess like we have other questions here. Um, So for now, once again, for our users who wasn't able to fill out the form, please do so, so that you're able to please do so that you're able to receive a certificate of participation coming from the Autodesk Community Philippines. And of course, given that this live stream will be saved for our Facebook and YouTube channel. If you want to aim for like a certificate of completion and indeed be certified as one of Autodesk ambassadors, you can also get to watch like the past lectures as well. Given that this is like a webinar series indeed, and of course you can participate in our like the last 2 monthly Fusion 360 challenges as well. So we do hope that we get to see you in August 2022 for generative design in Fusion 360 as well, as we conclude this very extensive journey in Fusion 360. As you can see, we just like started like a year ago in May 2021 as we started with the basics, and yet here we are now. We are delving deeper and indeed being able to explore like a lot of things, such as the one that we're discussing right now, such as photorealistic rendering. Um, okay, so I think like we do have I guess like a very last question for the purpose of time here as well. This
Sure.
is coming from another viewer here in YouTube. So the question goes as follows. So um in terms of rendering as well, how do you find like the proper view or like the proper perspective to be able to render this object like realistically as well? I hope like that question is like cohesive or clear enough. Again,
Right,
like
right. Yeah.
what is the proper perspective, like in terms like rendering, like you use like the front, or of course like it varies on the object.
Okay, so yeah, so if you have seen the renders of the gold ring that I've shown previously, so in this session we actually work with the home view a lot more often. But if you've seen the other renders that are shown in between the session, so the other renders, they were from the front view, from the side view, from the top edge view, and all of those other views. So basically, when you're trying to render an object, you have to take care of two things when placing the object, or when taking a camera view from a certain angle. You have to take care of two things. The first thing is that the main element, what is the main element of the design that you want to highlight? So in the case of the gold ring, the main element that I wanted to highlight was the diamond. So taking the camera view from the back angle or the back side view wouldn't have helped to highlight that diamond. So it is always advised to find a key element of your design that you want to focus on more. Like in this case, the diamond, I wanted to focus more on the diamond, so I took angles in a way that the diamond was getting focused properly and the light was kind of hitting directly to the diamond, so that we could see its internal reflections. That is the first thing. And the second thing is, of course, again, the lighting conditions. That how, if you are rendering in external environment, for example of the ornithopter in the field environment. So in that case also, you have to look about the environment, the external environment, from where the object is going to be projected in the external environment. For example, if the ornithopter, if I wanted to highlight the tail part of the ornithopter, and if I went from the backside view of the ornithopter, but from the backside view the environment wasn't looking very clean, or the environment wasn't looking that contrast with the main object, then I'll have to change the position of the object, or I'll have to rotate the environment in a way that both of them have a certain amount of contrast, to make both the things clearly visible, as well as focus on the detail, or focus on the entity that I want to portray, portray in a more wider sense, you can say.
So I guess like this marks the conclusion of the live stream. Once again, thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, and of course, like let's write together as well here in Autodesk community.